There is a type of person who walks into a room and immediately commands attention without saying a word. They do not seek the spotlight. They do not clamor for validation. They do not fill every silence with nervous chatter. Yet everyone notices them. Everyone wonders what they are thinking. Everyone feels a subtle unease in their presence. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this phenomenon centuries ago, this strange paradox where those who speak the least often hold the most power. Silence, when wielded correctly, is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is a weapon sharper than any words, more intimidating than any threats, more commanding than any demands. Today, we reveal the Machiavellian psychology of power that explains why the silent ones are feared, why those who master the art of strategic silence control rooms, relationships, and entire organizations without ever raising their voice. The world is filled with noise, with people desperate to be heard, to be seen, to matter. And in this chaos of endless talking, the silent observer becomes a mystery, an unknown quantity, a potential threat that cannot be measured or predicted. And what men cannot measure, they fear. Think about the people who dominate conversations, who always have an opinion, who never stop talking about themselves, their achievements, their problems, their thoughts on everything under the sun. Do you fear them? Or do you simply tune them out, categorize them, file them away as predictable, manageable, harmless? Now think about the person who sits quietly in meetings, who speaks only when necessary, whose words carry weight because they are rare. When that person finally speaks, the room goes silent. Why? Because scarcity creates value. Because mystery creates power. Because the one who reveals nothing controls everything. Machiavelli observed that princes who talk too much reveal their strategies, their weaknesses, their intentions. They become readable, predictable, vulnerable. But the prince who guards his words, who observes more than he reveals, who lets others fill the silence with their own anxieties and assumptions, this prince becomes untouchable. He is feared not because of what he says, but because of what he might know, what he might be planning, what he might do if provoked. Silence is the armor of the powerful, and today you will learn how to wield it. Consider the interrogation room, a place designed to break people through psychological pressure. What is the most effective technique? It is not shouting. It is not threats. It is silence. The interrogator asks a question and then says nothing. The silence becomes unbearable. The suspect feels compelled to fill it, to explain, to justify, to reveal more than they intended. Silence creates discomfort, and discomfort leads to confession. This same principle operates in every human interaction. The person who speaks first after an offer reveals their desperation. The person who explains themselves excessively reveals their guilt or insecurity. The person who fills every pause with chatter reveals their need for approval. But the person who can sit comfortably in silence, who does not feel the need to fill every gap with words, demonstrates control. They control the pace of the conversation. They control what information is shared and when. They control the emotional temperature of the room, and control is power. Before we dive deeper into the mechanisms of silent power and how you can harness it in your own life, if you're ready to understand the psychology that separates those who are controlled from those who control, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications for more insights on Machiavellian strategy and the hidden dynamics of power. Hit the like button if you've ever felt the commanding presence of someone who barely speaks, and comment below sharing a time when silence gave you more power than words ever could. Now let's explore exactly why the silent ones are feared and how you can become one of them. The first reason silence creates fear is that it generates uncertainty, and humans are hardwired to fear the unknown. When someone talks constantly, they reveal their thoughts, their emotions, their intentions, their capabilities. You can read them, you can predict them. You know what they want, what they fear, what they will likely do next. This predictability eliminates threat. But when someone remains silent, when they observe without revealing, when they listen without exposing their own position, they become a void that your mind fills with possibilities. What are they thinking? What do they know that I don't? Are they judging me? Are they planning something? This uncertainty is profoundly uncomfortable, and discomfort in the presence of another person translates into respect tinged with fear. Machiavelli teaches that it is better to be feared than loved, and silence is one of the most effective tools for cultivating that fear without overt aggression. Consider the poker player who never shows emotion, who sits stone-faced regardless of the cards they hold. Their opponents cannot read them. Every hand becomes a mystery. Is this confidence or bluffing? Strength or weakness? The inability to read the silent player creates anxiety in others, and anxiety leads to mistakes. The same dynamic plays out in business negotiations, in social hierarchies, in romantic relationships. The person who reveals everything, who wears their heart on their sleeve, who expresses every thought and feeling, gives away all their leverage. Their opponent knows exactly what they want and can manipulate that knowledge. But the person who remains inscrutable, who reveals only what serves their purpose, maintains all their leverage. They are playing chess while others are playing checkers, and everyone senses this, even if they cannot articulate why. The silent one seems more intelligent, more strategic, more dangerous. Not because they necessarily are, but because the absence of information allows others to project power onto them. This projection is crucial. When you speak little, people assume you are thinking deeply. When you reveal little, people assume you know much. When you react little, people assume you are in control. These assumptions work in your favor even if they are not entirely accurate. The appearance of power often matters more than the reality of power. Machiavelli understood this thoroughly. The prince who appears strong, calm, and in control is treated as if he actually is strong, calm, and in control. Perception shapes reality, and silence is one of the most efficient tools for shaping perception. It costs nothing. It requires no special skill. It simply requires discipline, the discipline to resist the urge to fill every space with your voice, to prove yourself with words, to seek validation through constant expression. The second reason the silent ones are feared is that silence forces others to reveal themselves. In any interaction, the person who talks more gives away more. They expose their insecurities through what they feel compelled to justify. They reveal their desires through what they emphasize. They show their weaknesses through what they defend against. The talkative person is an open book, easily read and easily manipulated, but the silent person becomes a mirror. Others talk to fill the void, and in doing so, they project their own thoughts, fears, and intentions onto the silence. They reveal information they never intended to share, simply because the discomfort of silence compelled them to speak. Machiavelli advises that a wise prince listens more than he speaks, observes more than he acts, because in listening and observing, he gathers intelligence while giving away nothing. Think about job interviews, where candidates are often judged not by what they say, but by what they reveal unintentionally. The candidate who talks nervously, who rambles, who over-explains, signals insecurity and desperation. The candidate who answers questions concisely and then returns to comfortable silence signals confidence and self-possession. Interviewers often describe this as presence or gravitas, but what they are really responding to is the power dynamic. The silent candidate is not trying to impress. They are evaluating. They are making the interviewer work for information rather than throwing it at them desperately. This reversal of the expected power dynamic creates respect and often secures the position. The same principle applies in romantic pursuits. The person who talks endlessly about themselves, who seeks constant validation, who needs to fill every moment with words, appears needy and low value. The person who is comfortable in silence, who asks questions and listens, who does not feel compelled to perform or prove anything, appears high value and self-sufficient. They become more attractive not because of what they say, but because of what they withhold. Silence also prevents you from making the mistakes that sink most people. How many relationships have been destroyed by words spoken in anger? How many careers have been ended by a moment of verbal indiscretion? How many secrets have been betrayed by loose lips? Machiavelli warns that men are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony, and I extend this. Men are quicker to forgive your actions than your words. Words once spoken cannot be unspoken. They linger, they are remembered, they are used against you. Actions can be denied, reinterpreted, or excused. but your own words condemn you with perfect clarity. The silent person avoids this trap entirely. They do not give their enemies ammunition. They do not create unnecessary conflicts through careless speech. They do not reveal information that can be used against them later. Every word they speak is intentional, measured, strategic, and because they speak so rarely, each word carries maximum impact. The third reason silence creates power is that it allows you to observe and understand while others are distracted by their own voices. Most people are so focused on what they want to say next, on how they are being perceived, on dominating the conversation, that they miss crucial information. They do not notice the micro-expressions that reveal true emotions. They do not catch the inconsistencies in others' stories. They do not see the power dynamics playing out in the room. But the silent observer sees everything. They notice who defers to whom. They observe who is genuinely confident and who is performing confidence. They detect the alliances, the tensions, the unspoken conflicts. This information is power. It allows the silent one to navigate complex social situations with precision, to know who to approach and who to avoid, to understand leverage points that others miss entirely. Machiavelli teaches that knowledge is the foundation of all effective action. The prince who does not understand his territory, his enemies, his allies, his resources will make fatal errors. But understanding requires observation, and observation requires silence. When you are talking, you are not learning. When you are performing, you are not analyzing. When you are trying to impress, you are not strategizing. The silent person has opted out of the performance to focus on the game itself. While others are competing for attention, the silent one is mapping the battlefield. While others are seeking approval, the silent one is identifying opportunities. While others are reacting emotionally, the silent one is calculating their next move. This cognitive advantage translates into better decisions, better relationships, better outcomes. And those who consistently achieve better outcomes are feared, respected, and elevated. Consider the workplace. Every meeting has someone who talks constantly, dominating the discussion, insisting their ideas are heard. Do they get promoted? Sometimes, if their ideas are genuinely good. But more often, it is the quiet one who gets promoted. The one who speaks little but whose few words solve problems. The one who observes the politics and navigates them skillfully. The one who understands what the boss actually wants versus what the boss says they want. This person has learned what the loud one has not. That power comes from understanding the system, not from making noise within it. Silence creates space for observation. Observation creates understanding. Understanding creates power, and power inspires fear. The fourth reason the silent ones are feared is that silence signals self-sufficiency and high status. People who need validation talk constantly. They seek reassurance, approval, acknowledgement. Their verbal diarrhea is a desperate attempt to matter, to be seen, to confirm their existence through the reactions of others. This neediness is low-status behavior. It signals that their sense of self is external, dependent on others' perceptions. But the silent person needs nothing from you. They are not performing for your approval. They are not seeking your validation. They are not trying to prove their worth. This self-sufficiency is inherently high status. It says, I am comfortable with myself. I do not need your approval to feel secure. I am not competing with you for attention because I do not need attention to feel valuable. This independence is attractive and intimidating in equal measure. People want to be around the self-sufficient person because their energy is not draining. But they also fear them because they cannot be controlled through the usual mechanisms of approval and disapproval. Machiavelli observed that princes who depend on the goodwill of others for their power invariably lose that power. The only secure power is that which rests on one's own arms, one's own resources, one's own capabilities. Silence is a manifestation of this principle in social interactions. The person who does not need to talk to feel important has psychological arms. They have inner resources that sustain them regardless of external feedback. This makes them unpredictable and uncontrollable. You cannot manipulate someone who does not need your approval. You cannot pressure someone who is comfortable in silence. You cannot dominate someone who will not compete with you for verbal supremacy. They have opted out of the game you are playing, and in doing so, they have won. Because the only way to win a game rigged against you is not to play. Think about high-status individuals throughout history: kings, queens, master strategists, powerful CEOs. They speak rarely. When they speak, rooms go silent. Their words are anticipated, analyzed, remembered. Why? Because scarcity creates value. If someone speaks constantly, their words become noise, easily ignored. But if someone speaks once a day, that single statement carries enormous weight. Everyone pays attention. Everyone wonders what wisdom or command will be issued. The silent person has turned their words into a scarce commodity, and like all scarce commodities, the value increases. Machiavelli would approve of this economic principle applied to social power. Manage your words like a miser manages gold. Hoard them. Spend them only when the return is maximum. And watch as your influence grows while others squander their verbal currency on meaningless chatter. The fifth reason silence is powerful is that it prevents you from being defined, categorized, or dismissed. The moment you talk extensively about your beliefs, your plans, your identity, others file you into neat categories. Oh, he is that type of person. She believes those things. I know how to deal with him. Categorization is the death of power because it makes you predictable. And what is predictable can be managed, countered, dismissed. But the silent person remains undefined. They are a question mark. Are they conservative or liberal? Traditional or progressive? Agreeable or difficult? No one knows because they have not revealed enough to be categorized. This ambiguity is strategically valuable. It allows you to operate in multiple spheres without being confined to one. It prevents enemies from forming because no one knows if you are a threat to their particular interests. It maintains optionality, the ability to move in any direction, because you have not committed to a specific identity through your words. Machiavelli advises flexibility. The prince must be able to adapt to circumstances, to be fierce when necessary and merciful when advantageous, to appear one way while acting another. But this flexibility is impossible if you have defined yourself rigidly through constant declarations. Your own words become a cage. People hold you to what you said. They call you hypocritical if you change. They feel betrayed if you act contrary to your stated beliefs. The silent person avoids this entirely. They have made no declarations that can be used against them. They have claimed no identity that limits their options. They remain fluid, adaptive, impossible to pin down. And this fluidity is terrifying to those who need others to be predictable, to fit into boxes, to stay in their assigned roles. Consider political leaders who speak constantly versus those who speak rarely. The constant talker creates endless opportunities for contradiction, for misinterpretation, for their words to be used against them. Every interview, every speech, every casual comment is ammunition for their enemies. They exhaust themselves defending old statements, clarifying misunderstandings, managing the fallout from verbal mistakes. The rare speaker gives no such ammunition. They speak only prepared statements on important matters. They give no casual interviews where they might be caught off guard. They create no verbal trail that can be used to attack them. This discipline protects them from one of the primary ways modern power is destroyed: death by 1,000 quotes. Machiavelli never had to deal with social media, but he would recognize immediately that platforms designed to make everyone talk constantly are traps. The wise person uses them strategically and sparingly, if at all. The powerful person controls their message rather than being compelled to constantly feed the beast of public attention. Now let us discuss how to cultivate strategic silence in your own life. The first step is recognizing that silence is a choice, not a void to be filled. Most people experience silence as uncomfortable, as something wrong that needs to be fixed with words. This is conditioning. You have been taught that silence is awkward, that gaps in conversation are failures, that not speaking means you have nothing to contribute. All of these beliefs are wrong, and they serve to keep you powerless. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is attention. It is power held in reserve. When you are silent, you are not failing to communicate. You are choosing not to communicate, which is a completely different thing. This choice must be conscious. You must recognize the urge to speak, to fill the silence, to prove yourself, and you must resist it. Not always, but strategically. Speak when speaking serves your purpose. Remain silent when silence serves better. Machiavelli teaches that the prince must master himself before he can master others. Self-mastery means controlling your impulses, and one of the strongest human impulses is the need to talk, to be heard, to matter through words. Mastering this impulse gives you an immediate advantage over 90% of people who cannot sit in silence without anxiety. Practice this. In your next conversation, let the other person talk. Do not interrupt. Do not jump in with your own story. Do not feel compelled to match their energy or fill their pauses. Simply listen. Observe. Notice how uncomfortable you feel at first. Notice the urge to speak rising in you. And notice how, if you resist this urge, the other person talks more, reveals more, and paradoxically likes you more for having listened. They walk away thinking you are wise, empathetic, intelligent, when all you did was remain silent. This is the power of strategic silence. The second step is learning to be comfortable in your own presence. The reason most people cannot stop talking is that silence forces them to be alone with their thoughts, and their thoughts are not comfortable companions. They have not developed an inner life that sustains them. They need constant external stimulation to avoid facing themselves. This is weakness. If you cannot be alone with yourself in silence, you are not self-sufficient. You are dependent on others to fill the void within you. Machiavelli would say such a person cannot be a prince. They are too needy, too dependent, too easily manipulated by those who provide the attention they crave. Develop your inner life. Spend time in silence. Meditate. Think. Reflect. Get comfortable with the sound of your own mind. When you can sit in a room alone without needing distraction, when you can be in a group without needing to talk, when you can go days speaking only when necessary without feeling invisible, you have achieved a level of self-sufficiency that most never reach. And that self-sufficiency radiates from you as presence, as power, as something others feel but cannot quite name. The third step is strategic revelation. Being silent does not mean being mute. It means being selective. Machiavelli advises that princes should speak little, but that when they do speak, their words should be meaningful and carefully chosen. Quality over quantity, impact over volume. When you do speak, make it count. Offer insights, not opinions. Ask questions that make others think, rather than statements that make others react. Speak to add value, to move things forward, to solve problems. Never speak simply to be heard, to prove you are smart, to compete for attention. This discipline transforms how others perceive your words. If you talk constantly, your occasional good idea drowns in the sea of your mediocre ones. But if you speak rarely, every statement is judged on its own merit and often given more credit than it deserves. Your silence creates anticipation. When you finally speak, people listen. This is the goal, not to be ignored, but to be heard with maximum impact when you choose to be heard. The fourth step is mastering your emotional reactions. The silent, powerful person is not simply quiet. They are calm. They do not react visibly to provocations, to insults, to threats, to surprises. This emotional control is perhaps more important than verbal control, because if you remain silent but your face betrays rage, fear, or excitement, you have revealed yourself anyway. Machiavelli speaks of the prince maintaining composure regardless of circumstances. The same applies to you. When something angers you, do not show anger. When something excites you, do not show excitement. When something frightens you, do not show fear. Maintain a neutral, observant expression. Let others guess what you are feeling. This emotional opacity amplifies the power of your silence. People cannot read you. They cannot predict you. They cannot manipulate you by pushing your emotional buttons because they do not know where those buttons are. This requires practice. Start with small things. When someone insults you, do not react. Simply observe them. When someone praises you, do not beam with pleasure. Simply acknowledge it neutrally. When something goes wrong, do not panic. Simply assess the situation calmly. Over time, this emotional discipline becomes natural, and you become the person who is unshakable, mysterious, powerful. The fifth step is choosing when to break your silence for maximum effect. If you are silent all the time in all situations, you become invisible rather than powerful. The goal is strategic silence, not absolute silence. There are moments when speaking is necessary, when it serves your interests, when your words can shape outcomes. The skill is recognizing these moments and seizing them. Machiavelli tells us that timing is everything in the exercise of power. The same action taken at different times produces different results. Speak when your words will have maximum impact. Speak when everyone is listening. Speak when you have something definitive to say. Speak when silence would be interpreted as weakness rather than strength. And when you do speak, speak with authority, with clarity, with finality. Do not qualify, do not hedge, do not seek approval. State your position and return to silence. This pattern of long silence, punctuated by decisive speech, creates a rhythm that others come to respect and fear. They know that when you speak, it matters. They know that your silence is not absence but presence. They know that you are always observing, always thinking, always 2 steps ahead. So now you understand why they fear the silent ones. It is not the silence itself they fear. It is what the silence represents: self-control, strategic thinking, emotional independence, observation without judgment, power held in reserve. The silent person has opted out of the desperate scramble for attention and validation that consumes most people. They have recognized that in a world of noise, silence is the ultimate differentiator. They have learned that mystery creates fascination, that scarcity creates value, that the person who reveals nothing controls everything. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The most dangerous prince is not the one who rants and threatens. It is the one who watches, listens, and strikes when you least expect it. The most powerful person in the room is not the one commanding attention through volume. It is the one whose quiet presence makes others nervous, whose few words carry more weight than others' speeches, whose stillness suggests depth that cannot be measured. Become that person. Master the art of strategic silence. Let others talk themselves into corners while you observe. Let others reveal their strategies while you conceal yours. Let others seek validation while you remain self-sufficient. And watch as the power dynamic shifts in your favor, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it through the simple, profound discipline of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. This is Machiavellian power in its purest form. This is why they fear the silent ones, and this is how you join their ranks.